Has a defensive savior arrived in Stillwater? From the News OK studios in Oklahoma City, I'm Mike Sherman, and this is the Press Row. My guests, as always, are columnists Jenny Carlson, John Rohde, and Barry Trammell. And we're talking about what to make of Oklahoma State's best performance against an elite opponent in years. Defensively, especially, Barry, does OSU's 24-10 win over Georgia herald some new sort of era in Stillwater as far as defense? Does it mean the Cowboys are getting serious about playing D?
Well, I think they've always been serious about playing defense. They just haven't always known how to go about it. As debuts go, this was smashing. I think in the last 25 years, every Oklahoma State defensive coordinator has been heralded as a savior, but only one really produced, and that was Rob Ryan in the 1997 season. But this is a great start. Georgia's not a great offensive team, but they're the kind of team that can make you look bad while they're scoring 24 points. OSU didn't let them score 24. They held them to 10. Dominant performance after the opening drive. I think there's a great reason for optimism in Stillwater.
You know, I don't know, John, you and I were there, and I don't know if you were as impressed by this as I was, but schematically, obviously, I mean, they were good schematically, but I thought the way that the Cowboys recovered after that opening drive to allow Georgia to drive 10 plays, 80 yards, and then mentally to get back in the game like they did, to me, John, that was as impressive as anything they did schematically under Bill Young on Saturday.
That's the Bill Young signature, which Mike Gundy was trying to explain after the game. While the game's going on, he's giving instructions on the field and turning around and telling the backups, look at what they're doing and this is what you need to do. Jenny's right. After that opening drive, 80 yards and 10 plays, you're going, oh, we've seen this movie before. But rather than a Beckman or a Bedford, the previous defensive coordinators turning around and getting in their face, Young said, forget about that. We got the next one. All right? And there's this intercom, more than anything, his presence, as Coach Gundy has said, is so vital, I think, Barry, to all this.
Well, he does have a grandfatherly type presence about him, and it's different than what we've seen most of the time in Stillwater, although, I mean, Bill Clay had a little bit of that too. He just never had a performance like Saturday. Okay,
so let's go on the field. We know what Bill Young's done. I'm not going to throw out the word genius yet, but based on the results, he's in the conversation. But how about Parrish Cox? Let's put a label on him. Is he a shutdown corner, Jenny?
Wow, he was really good on Saturday. I mean, I think I would still like to see him play the way he did on Saturday again against Houston, because I think Houston's going to pose a whole different kind of test for this Oklahoma State defense. They're going to throw it around a lot more than Georgia did, a lot more spread, a lot more receivers out in formation. So he needs to come to play, but the way he played on Saturday, John, man, it was impressive.
And I think the touchdown pass was between him and Sexton, and he almost came up with it. But athletically, Barry, there's no question he's got what it takes. Mentally, I hear he's a lot stronger than a year ago. Maybe it's all starting to fall into place.
Bill Young was asked on Monday, is it too soon or is it fair to call Parrish Cox special? And Bill Young said, I would go beyond that. I would say he's very special. So maybe he is in the Kevin Williams, R.W. McQuarters caliber of cornerback.
All I know is that A.J. Green disappeared after about the second or third drive. They threw 3 at him with Cox on him. One time he almost took it, went to the house. And what we're told from the national media, especially an OSU alum who does a lot of talking on ESPN, that A.J. Green is better than Dez Bryant. Well, he wasn't on Saturday, and a big part of that was what Parrish Cox did to him.
Well, and I know OSU fans don't like when OU's looped into the conversation, but Dom Franks has gotten a lot of praise both nationally and locally. If I had to pick a defensive back to start with on a team, I'd take Parrish Cox before I'd take Dom Franks.
Okay, lastly, Barry, what's a better test for this Cowboy defense? The team they played last Saturday or the team they'll play this Saturday?
I think Georgia was the tougher test because they've played teams like Houston. You see them all the time in the Big 12, Texas Tech particularly, but Missouri spreads them out, and OU and Texas do some of that. Georgia was old-fashioned smash mouth with a huge line against OSU's undersized D-line. If you had to say, hey, this is a team that can push Oklahoma State around, it would be somebody like Georgia, and it didn't happen. So I think that was the supreme test. This is a great test because it is so different. If they ace this one, or if they just play reasonably well, you can have a lot of optimism that they can handle about anything they see all year.
I'm still surprised at how big Georgia was, John. I mean, I I knew they were going to be big, but it was sort of like the year that OSU played Ohio State in the Alamo Bowl, and those guys trotted out on the field, and you're like, wow, these guys are huge. Physically just imposing guys out there on both sides of the ball. For OSU to be able to, with their speed and the size that they have, to handle that, that to me it speaks volumes about the kind of opponent Georgia was and what OSU was able to do.
See, I'm going to disagree with Barry because, Barry, you were talking about they faced the pass, but they haven't stopped passing teams before, so I think Houston is the true test. It's nice to know that OSU can get physical if it needs to. They did well last year, OSU against Missouri, special game. They didn't stop OU. They didn't stop Texas. So the fact that Houston does air it out, guys, I think that's a stiffer test. I mean, let me go back to Texas. That was a terrific game. Was it 28-24? But I have more questions about how they'll do against the pass than how they would do against the run.
And like you say, John, that is more of a Big 12 style offense
Right.
that they're going to see week to week in the Big 12. A good test this weekend for the Cowboys. That's all for this episode of the Press Row, but you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere, every day at News OK, and every morning in the Oklahoma.
Let's see it.